Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show, and it's a wonderfully mild day here in not so sunny South Carolina this afternoon. It adds over there in the middle of the North Atlantic heat dome that's taking over the Northeast over there. He can keep all of that. I can see his sweat from here. Ed, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing okay. I'm inside the air conditioning, so I'm staying cool. I was actually doing a bunch of yard work earlier today, so I am a tad sweaty, but it feels good with the AC cranking.
Well, I bet. I absolutely hate yard work. That's why I pay people to do it for me, but I got to find a new guy, so I've been having to do it the past couple of weeks. Poor pitiful me. I have to go outside and break a sweat.
I told you. I mean, I do it for you. You just got to pay my traveling expenses, which will be fine.
Yeah, that's not gonna work for me.
No.
Unless we can have live footage of you for the show traveling down 95 and 85 on a zero turn mower. It'd be awesome.
Let's see if we can work that out.
Yeah, we'll get it done. Oh, so I was going through everything that I've got to get done for this weekend. Marriage convalidation, baptism, confirmation. Been talking about it on here the past couple of days, bringing it up. And of course, it's the day after tomorrow. And the person that I was hoping to take care of the photographs can only do the 5 p.m. I'm like, now I got to find somebody for the 3, which is the actual ceremony. And it's so ironic how it worked out, too, because my best man / witness is a professional photographer who is also employed with one of the local newspapers, takes amazing photographs, got one of those, $5,000 camera setups. And I'm like, the only other option I'm going to have is I'm going to have to say, look, I know you're my friend. You're my confirmation sponsor, but I'm going to need you to step back into the background and just use your camera. And I had to tell him that, like, you use your camera. I'll find somebody else to do the best man bit. We're guys. It shouldn't hurt anybody's feelings. It'll be fine. But of course, it's got to happen at the last minute, 2 days before. And then the Catholic dad duty of having to correspond with the religious education director at our parish because it's already time to re-register the kids for their classes coming up this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then my son, 15 years old, who's the altar server, I've mentioned him on here before, had to reach out with the deacon who kind of handles all the formation and training of the altar servers, because my son wants to serve at the mass when I'm baptized and confirmed, because he said it means a lot to him, which in turn obviously means a whole lot to me. So it's very awesome. Got all that done and still managed to be late coming on here. Just lost track of time and everything.
Well, we'll just dock your pay for that. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Just take it out of my check. That's all right. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but it's kind of crazy that we're getting ready to witness something literally in front of our eyes on our computer screens and on our phones that I don't think at least I've never seen. Maybe it's happened before, but I've never seen it. And it could just be because I've never paid attention to the Catholic Church or any of its dealings prior to converting.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me that we have a full-blown schism getting ready to take place, again, right in front of our eyes, which, I mean, it's kind of wild. We have old Vigano, who has been very openly anti-Pope Francis and anti-Vatican II. He released today, or at least earlier today, that the dicastery for the doctrine of faith has communicated to him with a simple email the start of an extrajudicial criminal trial against him with the accusation of having committed the crime of schism, and accuses him of having denied the legitimacy of Pope Francis, of having broken communion with him, and of having rejected the Second Vatican Council. And he's been summoned to the Palace of the Holy Office on June 20th, which is today, in person or represented by a lawyer. He put out a statement saying that he considers the accusations made against him as a reason for honor, and that he believes the very wording of the charges confirms the thesis that he's repeatedly supported in his interventions. Says it's no coincidence that the accusations against him concerns the questioning of the legitimacy of Pope Francis, but in his letter or his release, he named Pope Francis not as Pope Francis, but as Jorge Mario Bergoglio, and the rejection of Vatican II, and the council represents the ideological, theological, moral, and liturgical cancer of what he calls the Bergoglian synodal church is necessary metastasis. Now, again, I don't know if anything like this has ever happened, at least in recent years, to the point where it's something to watch unfold in real time. I mean, obviously things happen all the time. I remember Bishop Strickland. He had the case against him for what he did against Pope Francis's wishes of going out to host that prayer rally in California against those heretics. I'm not even going to say their name, but the ones that made a complete mockery of cloistered sisters. I'm not going to say their names because I don't want them to get attention at all. And obviously he was removed from his position. Obviously he remains a bishop because that's not something that can be removed, but he was removed from his position. Yeah, I don't know if we've ever seen anything like this unfold in real time on social media. If it has, someone enlighten me. You guys can comment, email, DM, whatever. But I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. And it's very wild to see it in real time. Because like I said, most of the things that happen within the church, they're not always publicly broadcasted, right? Anytime the Pope requests a specific audience with a cardinal or a bishop or a priest or whatever, I think the only one that's received a lot of social media attention, which is as it should, and we still haven't seen a satisfactory resolution to this, is the case with Father Rupnik, who we all know what the allegations and things against him are. And it's kind of astounding to me that he still possesses priestly faculties. And Vatican Press has continued to use his artwork on their website, which I say artwork. I mean that in quotations, which is why the inflection was there when I said it.
Yeah.
Because it's really ugly to begin with. Yeah. I don't see why they would want to put any of those mosaics up there. But yeah, it's weird to see something like this unfold publicly, because that's usually very restricted to the political realm. But obviously there are politics in Rome. There are politics within the Catholic Church. There shouldn't be, but there are. It's kind of the nature of the beast of modern society that we find ourselves in today. I don't know. I mean, have you ever seen anything like this play out, publicly in the way that it's done now?
No, I haven't. And, you were kind of mentioning the fact that the Catholic Church, and this is something that some people have an issue with, is that the Catholic Church is usually very private with these sort of things. They don't get a lot of play. They don't get a lot of print. But I think that we've entered this age now where we do have social media. We do have so many ways for this information to get out. And I think that sometimes some of the players want to kind of have like a preemptive strike. And so they make sure that that information gets out, hoping to sway, I guess. So have I seen it before? Obviously not. And I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I'm very happy about it. I don't think that we need to have our, the old saying, we don't have our laundry aired out in public. But I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, the closest thing would be, and also you alluded to it, like with Bishop Strickland, and I think part of that was because Bishop Strickland was, and still is, very visible on social media. I mean, I still follow him on Twitter. I know he's on Facebook at least as well, and I don't know. I think it brings up this whole thing of fidelity to the church, fidelity to the Pope, and things like that. And if your name is being brought up as far as you need to be spoken to by the Holy See and things like that, do you just very quietly show up for that meeting and take your licks, or do you try to get that support going into it and beforehand and saying, well, listen, there's two sides to this. And here's what I think people need to know about my involvement in this. I mean, obviously, like Bishop Strickland is still very, very vocal on social media, and people have, there's no guessing at where he stands on certain issues. He lets you know, and obviously he's also paying the price for that as well. So I don't know. Have I seen it before? Absolutely not. Usually with the Catholic Church, you find out things long after they've happened, long after they've been dealt with, if you find out about it at all. So this is very interesting, and it will be, there's a lot of eyes on this, and it will be very interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, with his statement being made, and posted and circulated on social media, I'm talking about Vigano's statement. It does seem to me, just because I've existed in this world for over half a decade now, where I've seen the way these things work. To me, it seems like it's more of a chess move. It's not so much as, oh no, look what's happening to me. It's, let me play the media and court of public opinion game. Now, I'm not saying I'm 100% sure that's what he's doing, but that's what it looks like to me. Let me go ahead and throw this out there. And it kind of reminds me of the kid who got in trouble at high school, and he goes and tells everybody, guess who's got to go to the principal's office later? That kind of thing. But it's a double-edged sword. I like that our church is capable of having this level of transparency, because I do think transparency is important. There should not be things or actions taken by the church on anything that remain closed off, right? That should be remain invisible to the laity, right? I get that.
Yeah.
But this thing with Vigano and the church, the way that it started off, the way that I first heard about it, was just a few hours ago, does seem to me, like I said, it's that, let me go ahead and launch this. Guess who's getting called to the principal's office because of this. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad I'm going. And he's being accused of schism, which, look, that is the one thing the church needs to fight the absolute hardest against. And I mean, it's the Catholic Church. We need to be in communion and in unity. And those that are doing nothing but touting their support for seating from the church. I mean, come on. This is not something people should be embracing. You're advocating for schism. It flies right into the same argument as where, like we make arguments against Protestants all the time. They go, well, I interpreted the scripture my way. So, and I don't, or the I don't need to go to church to believe in God argument, right? It's placing the authority in your own hands, which that in itself is a sin. And honestly, I think a lot of the ones that are pushing for schism, whether it's with the rumors circulating that the TLM is going to disappear, whether it's people who don't believe that Francis is the one true pope. He is, by the way. Sorry to disappoint. Because there's people out there that claim there hasn't been a single legitimate pope since before Paul VI. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. But of course it is. I don't think, and this might make a lot of them mad, but I think they're weak. Because you and I have talked about this before. I don't, and no Catholic does, agree with every single word that comes out of Pope Francis's mouth. I don't, and no single Catholic does agree with every single decision made by the church. Like, for example, I disagree that Strickland should have been stripped of his position. I disagree with that. That's my opinion.
I'm with you on that.
But neither you or I have the authority to tell the church that it was wrong in doing so. Neither you or I, or any other Catholic out there, possesses the authority to deny the ruling of the church, which does have full authority. The Pope himself, again, we've talked about this before, he's not infallible. Papal infallibility has been used twice since it was actually created as a doctrine to the church, right? But the authority of the church and the magisterium is what we live by. You do have two choices in these matters. You can tiptoe the line or jump right off of the cliff of a schismatic response, or you can obey the magisterium. That's the only two choices. Guess what? Yeah. Obeying the magisterium in cases where you have a disagreement with some of the decisions made on a papal level or in any level within church hierarchy, they're not always going to be easy, right? A good example is, like we've talked about, Pope before the death penalty, right? Pope Francis has stated that there's zero reason for the death penalty on a moral level, because we now have the ability to not end that person's life, no matter the level of heinousness of their crime, because we can ensure that they are locked away forever and ever and ever without ever gaining the ability to ever hurt another single person. That wasn't always the case throughout history. Throughout history, the case came down to we're going to have to kill
Mhm.
this guy, because if we don't, he's going to find a way to keep hurting people, and we don't have the means to stop it. So you kill him, right? It was a last resort thing. But here we are, 2024. We do have the means to stop someone from ever hurting any other person again. So therefore, the death penalty flies in the moral violation of the dignity of the human body. I disagree with the decision, and I wrestle with it every single day when I see a heinous headline talking about some guy or woman or whatever, some criminal did some monstrous act to an innocent person or persons. And I'm like, they should just hook him up in old Sparky and flip the switch and leave it on till there's nothing left. I'm okay paying a higher electric bill. I'm serious. That is my first reaction when I see some of these headlines with some of these horrible things that happen. But I cannot, in good conscience, in adhering to the magisterium and the authority of the church, support it. I can't, because it flies directly in the face of the authority of the church. And so here we are. And schism is nothing more than someone saying that their authority is higher than that of the churches. And if you start there, it becomes this downward spiral of, well, what else? What else are you going to say you disagree with in the magisterium? And I get it. When the actions of individuals in the church do something that blatantly flies against the magisterium, we have a duty as Catholics to rebel against it and stop it from happening, because it becomes heretical. We have to stamp out heresies. But until that happens, even if it makes us uncomfortable, even if we disagree, we submit to the authority of the church. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about that is, and I think we lose sight of this. We've talked about this before. We talked about it within the last couple of days. How when we were talking about actually just yesterday about parishes and becoming a member of your parish. And I'll tell you where I'm going with this is that we talked about it being your parish being your family, and the church as a whole is that same way. It is a family, and you look at your own family. Like Jeff, you've got 9 kids, you've got a wife. You are the head of your household. You're the head of your family. I am sure with that many voices, there are decisions you make. There are things that you say that some people do not agree with, but they don't leave the family. They don't walk down the street and say, "Oh, I'm going to move in with the Millers," something like that, because they're
And
smart
that's
enough,
unfortunate, because it would make my grocery bills a
that
lot cheaper.
even if they don't agree with everything that you say. Exactly. But they understand that over the course of time, you are moving the family in the right direction. They may not agree with every single tiny decision you make, but they agree with your leadership and your leadership abilities. And it's the same way with the church. We're going to have, you mentioned a few things that the Pope has said or done that they make you scratch your head. Maybe you don't agree with it, but I'm not going to go join the Lutheran street or start my own non-denominational, in a local closed 7-Eleven or something like that, just because the Pope said something that I disagree with. So this is where I have trouble with this, because, we have in our country now, we have such a huge divide between, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals. And it used to be when I was a kid, there was some crossover. There was some middle sort of a thing We don't see that anymore. I don't want to see that same thing in the Catholic Church. I don't want to see, and we do see it on Twitter and stuff like that, where you've got these die-hard conservative TLM, Francis isn't my Pope kind of folks on one side, and then you've got on the other side, you've got nuns on the bus who are picking up people and taking them to their abortion appointments and things like that, and you've got folks that say that the church needs to change its stance on abortion and gay marriage and transgender issues, and goes on and on and on. I mean, whatever social issues we're plagued with, we're creating these dividing lines, and some people say, yeah, we're headed towards a division. There's going to be a very conservative version of the Catholic Church. There's going to be a very liberal version of the Catholic Church, but they are going to be two separate churches. Well, you and I know that's not going to happen. That's not the way this plays out. So again, it comes back to, there are going to be times when you're scratching your head. You're saying, why is the current Pope saying this? Why is he doing that? But you don't walk away from it, because you understand that in the long run, there might be times when you are at odds with the church, you disagree with something that the Pope says, whatever. But in the long run, the church is going in the right direction, and it's overall being led by Christ, not by these individuals within the church that you may or may not have a problem with. And so that's what when I see these issues like what you're talking about today, this is where I have a problem, because we can't get bogged down in these individual cases and these individual situations that look like we're headed towards schism and things like that. These things need to be worked out. They need to be looked at, and sometimes it takes stepping back and just removing yourself from the situation and just saying, well, let's see how this plays out. Let's see what the resolution is. And because I think, if you ask me about, you go back to the Bishop Strickland thing again, I think at the point he's going to be back as an active bishop in a diocese. Things are going to work out. And if that's fine. He's still serving God's people the best he can under the circumstances that he finds himself in. You have to keep going back to the fact that Christ established the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is not going anywhere. And if there are people who leave, we have our Orthodox brothers and sisters who left, along with those of us that Byzantine faith, and they never came back. And that's something they'll have to discuss with Christ at some point. But we just have to understand that. We just have to understand there are going to be rocky moments. There are going to be stormy seas within our journey in the Catholic Church, but that doesn't mean you abandon ship. You just keep plugging along.
Yeah, there's an old axiom, and you've heard it, I've heard it, everyone's heard it, that good sailors aren't made in calm waters. And maybe what's going on right now is the storm of our time, because every single generation has had its storm in the Catholic Church. And look, there are way too many lukewarm Catholics out there that they're cafeteria Catholics. They're Catholic in name only. What was that? CNOs or whatever. They're Catholic in name only, but when push comes to shove, they're going to fold rather than hold on to the truth. Or when things get to the point where they're uncomfortable or they're angry, they're going to say, well, you know what? I'm just leaving. It's like the kid saying, I'm running away. But they don't really run away. They pack up their bag, they grab their teddy bear, and they go and stand in the backyard behind a tree until they think mom's not watching, and they figure out whatever they're going to do next, or come inside and pretend like nothing happened because they're too embarrassed to say anything otherwise. And look, maybe this is one of those things that we don't know anything at this point, and we won't know for several years, but maybe this is something that's happening in our church, in our lives, that if we make it through to the other side, it'll be something that we can look at and we'll go, okay, God, I get it now. I see what you were doing, because all of that gave me the experience, the temperance, the endurance, and the faith to deal with whatever I'm dealing with now. It's kind of, God allows things to happen to us because in the future, something else is going to happen, and we'll go, now I see why I went through all of those things, because there's no coincidences. It's providence. We have things that happen to us. Like I look back at the time I was homeless. That was the worst time of my life. I've got my wife. She's pregnant. I've got kids. We're all living in a motel. I'm working at one of those work today, get paid today labor places, and I'm making $56 a day. And I'm working 9-10 hours in the West Texas desert. That sucked. But you know what? It prepared me for in 2014 when my wife's sister came back from the Middle East and we were able to move in with her. And I came back here to South Carolina and I found a good paying job. And that job was hard, but it definitely wasn't harder than working in the West Texas desert heat for 9-10 hours a day for $56 an hour and living in a motel and walking everywhere because we didn't have a car. And carrying just enough groceries to fit in our little mini fridge in the extended stay hotel in a backpack and on my hands after working. And so you know what? I got us a place. I worked that job endlessly, tirelessly. And my time being homeless, having to work as hard as I did, prepared me for that. It made me capable of getting through it. Maybe that's going to be something like what we're seeing now here in the church. There's always going to be a storm brewing, but at the other end of the storm, when your ship stayed upright, everyone on deck, the whole crew, they're stronger sailors. They have a newfound confidence and a newfound strength and skill that they developed in navigating that storm. And so when another storm happens, they're all the more stronger for it and they're ready for it. I don't want to see another major schism in our church because of all of this. And I do feel like that's a real risk right now, with Vigano's statement being made so publicly as it was, as if it was almost like a passive aggressive rally call to all of the people that hold these schismatic positions with him. It was like, hey, look, this is it, boys. I'm being called up and I'm going to face whatever they give me, but I consider their punishment an honor. And then people who hold these same schismatic views are going to see that and go, well, if you get kicked out, we'll leave the church too. And that's not the answer. I mean, if let's say for hypothetical purposes, let's say even 50% of his claims against Pope Francis are true. If someone walks into your house and says, I'm here to change the way everything has been done, it's going to be done my way. It's going to go against the values of the home, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. What do? Do you just leave the house? No, because then everyone else, all of your brothers and sisters, they're all sitting there and they're like, well, now we're stuck under this, because the people who could have stood their ground and withstood and said, no, we're not going to, abandoned. If someone's coming into your house to change the way things are and weaken that house, well, I'm just going to run away from it and do my own thing next door. It's only a matter of time before the exact same thing happens there. We've seen this before. We even saw this with the Orthodox Church. It was the Great Schism. What happened?
Yeah.
What happened? You think everybody just split and everybody that left with the Orthodox Church just lived happily ever after under their patriarch? They did not. They had the exact same thing happen then. You had people constantly infighting and coming and going and leaving and threatening their own schism from there. And we even saw several schisms throughout the Orthodox Church through history. What makes you think this is going to be any different? It's not. And I would hate to see people leaving the church because of Vigano's statement or whatever happens with Vigano. And I pray that whatever the result of his extrajudicial procedure, that's probably already took place, because Italy's 7 hours ahead of us. I hope whatever the decision there isn't to remove him from the church, isn't to excommunicate him. It shouldn't be, because quite frankly, if he was going to be excommunicated, but we have people like Joe Biden who haven't been, then we definitely have an issue. Right? I mean, come on. We have Joe Biden who blatantly advocates for abortion and flies everything directly into the face of the church. And so if he's there, Vigano should remain. I hope that whatever happens, I mean, obviously something's going to, but I do hope it's on the same level at the very maximum as what happened with Bishop Strickland. Because Bishop Strickland wasn't excommunicated. He lost his position. But the difference is Bishop Strickland's not calling for schism. He's not telling people to leave the church. He just states his position, and that is in opposition with some of the decisions and opinions and choices made by Pope Francis and the dicastery of the Doctrine of Faith. He's never called for people to leave the church, and at least as far as I know. I hope that if that's Vigano's intention here, and I don't know if it is because I can't speak for the man, but I hope that if his intention is to cause this to happen so that he can be excommunicated from the church or defrocked or whatever. I don't even think this is a defrockable offense. It might be. I don't know canon law. But I hope that that falls short and that at a maximum level, it's the same level of consequence that took place with Bishop Strickland. Because I do fear that if he were to be excommunicated from the church and all of this unfolded, and again, I don't even know if this is an excommunicable offense. I don't know the legalistics of canon law. But if it is, I hope it doesn't happen. Because if it does, we will see a lot of people turning around with this, again, what I take to be a very passive aggressive, hey guys, I'm about to be punished. Are y'all with me or not? Kind of play that he made with social media.
Yeah, I think his purpose there was more of just trying to draw attention to what he sees as issues within the church, issues with uh, with the Pope. I think that's it's more of
I hope
that. I
that's
don't
the
think it's
case.
um, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I don't think
I
I
hope
think
that's
it's
the
just
case. And the
I
reason
just
that I
he
said what
has
I
social
said
media
is,
available. Yeah,
yeah, the reason that I said what I said is it's just the way I am. I look at things in the most possible worst case scenario because chances are it's never going to be the worst case scenario.
yeah,
And so everything minus that is
mhm,
more tolerable. That's just the way I look at things.
yeah. No, I know. I get it. Yeah, and better to be prepared for the worst case scenario when it never happened than not be prepared for what may happen. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I
Yeah,
think you
if
do
you're
have to look at it
expecting
that
level
way. But
10 and you're ready
but
for it and it only gets to 6, okay, you're good.
then you're good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, I will say I don't think this is going to be something that's uh resolved quickly. This is probably going to echo through the rest of the year, if not the next 2 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh look, I mean, like we keep going back to the Strickland issue, and I mean, I don't think that's not fully resolved. Um,
No.
I think there's more to come in that area. You know, so
Yeah,
the
but
one
like I
thing the
said,
church does
it
not
it it,
do.
it's maddening.
Yeah, it is. But one thing the church does not do is move rapidly. So
It's just about as quick as a glacier. Yeah. It moves at a glacial pace, and it after a couple of centuries, you finally get the answer. It's the world's longest game of telephone. Oh, I don't know if Ed lost
exactly.
my sound or not. Okay, never mind. He got it.
Now I got it. We're good. We're good. It's humid here, Jeff.
Yeah, it's humid. It's the humidity coming off of you. You're over there sweating so much. That's why. But no, yeah, this
Hmm.
definitely was not what I had in mind for today's show. Um, but it came up, and it's important to talk about it. And I'll tell you what, for anybody that watched or listened, if you've got a different opinion than mine, I want you to know something. I 100% respect your opinion. If I'm getting something wrong
Of
here,
course.
um, if you want to educate me, because I'm new to this. I've been here a year and a month. Okay. So if I'm missing something and you can fill in whatever gaps for me, then please do it. I ask that you do it as respectfully as I am to you right now, but also understand that I may not share the same opinion that you do, or I might. I don't know. Ed's changed my mind about a few things. Uh, I'm not
Wow.
I'm not unreasonable, but if the only thing is going to be an emotional based reaction because you just don't like the way things have gone, then I'm not going to consider your argument to be something that I would be interested in entertaining as accurate. But if I'm wrong about something, if there's a way that you can add to this conversation in the comments under this video that sheds more light on it, then that would be awesome. If not, and you're just like, no, Jeff's an idiot. I don't want to hear him, want to talk to him. Congratulations. You share the same view as my parents. But like I said, I'm expressing my opinion. That look, it's not like I'm sponsored by EWTN or anything. Okay. This is my opinion and commentary on the matter as I see it. If I'm wrong,
Very true.
I've been wrong once or twice before in my life. I'm not quite used to it, but I'm getting there. It is what it is. So, all of that said, I'm going to shift all the way over and say, Ed, you take full control now and show me what cool thing you pulled out of your basement, because we've beat this one almost to death. We've said what needs to be said, and we've expressed where we stand on it. But it did need to be said. Again, it's something that really big just came up, and it needed to be addressed.
Well, today, the last couple of days, things came not from my basement, but from my office. Today, something definitely did come from the basement. And I brought in a newspaper, actually, from June 27th of 1933. It's from the New York, the Daily News, which I believe is still in existence, the Daily News, in certain parts of the world. In January, Hitler rose to power. He became, he was the chancellor, I believe, of Germany, even though Hindenburg was still the president. But things started very quickly with the Third Reich. By the 1st of March, Hitler started rounding up his political rivals and imprisoning them. By the middle of March, the Nazis were occupying the Bavarian state parliament. In middle of March, also, Hitler declared the Third Reich. Believe it or not, I mean, when you think about World War II and you think about the Nazis, you think about like 1941 to 1945. You think about Germany invading Poland in September of 1939. But it started so much earlier than that. And in fact, Dachau, the first concentration camp, was opened in March of 1933. So this was building for quite a while. So many different things happened in that year. They law which said that if you were not of the Aryan race, you could not be in civil service in Germany. They started outlawing some of the kosher rituals that the Jewish Germans would perform. In April, they established the Gestapo in Germany. And in May, they started burning books that the German government did not quite agree with. Also in May, the Nazi Party introduced eugenics and sterilizing people who had various physical ailments, mental conditions, and things like that. And they just didn't want them to reproduce. And so the reason I mention all this is because by the time June rolls around, Hitler's only been in power for 5 months or so. They decided it would be a good idea to start putting Catholics in jail. So this is from, like I said, this is from June 27th, 1933. In yes, the New York Daily News. And what had happened was very interesting, because when you read through the actual article, they talk about how they saw the Catholics as a political party, really, and they saw them as a threat. And you think about the term fake news, And what comes to mind? You think about, was it the 2016 election? And you think that Donald Trump had coined that phrase, but he didn't. Here's this article from 1933, and when you read through it, they accused the Catholics of producing fake news. It literally says that in this article, because the Catholics saw what was going on in Germany. They saw all these things that I had just mentioned, and they knew that there was reason for concern. And so Hitler was smart enough to see the Catholic Church as a threat and as a very strong entity. And so he started rounding up various Catholic priests, sisters, even lay Catholics who were speaking out against what the Nazis were doing, and started putting them in prison as political prisoners. So, yeah, I mean, it's there are times when it has not been very easy to be a Catholic, and being a Catholic in Nazi Germany in 1933, you were at risk when you left your house. So yeah, this is again from the Daily News, June 27, 1933. Nazis jail Catholics. So that's what we have today.
That's crazy.
From the archives.
That's crazy. I remember when you brought on that rosary. I remember when you brought on that rosary that belonged to one of the Catholic priests that was conscripted into the German army and was forced to wear the uniform. And he carried that rosary in his pocket in secret. And so he was showing up to these people's houses under the guise of a Nazi officer. And he was performing the mass in secret, and he was taking confession and administering sacraments to the Catholics, again, all while under the guise of a willing Nazi officer. So that's a pretty cool little tie in there. It does go to show that, you had mentioned during that a lot of the Catholics resisted that were going to be conscripted into the German army. Obviously much later during the war as well. But then they were either executed or, as you said, jailed. And it's really cool. You have that newspaper article from, what do you say, it was 33? That 33 ties it in and shows like a little bit more of that full picture. That's really cool. Yeah. I mean, that's what I say, Jim. Part of the reason I have these things, some of the people would say, boy, you've got some really, I don't know if you'd call it morbid things or just really things that are real downers, but I think it's important. I think, when you don't embrace it and protect you are destined to lose it. And I think that, especially that you mentioned earlier today, the cafeteria Catholics, these are the people that are basically Catholic in name only, and they don't understand what being Catholic entails and what goes along with that, and how very quickly you can lose that. You can lose what should be so important to you. And so I think we need to embrace our Catholic faith. We need to protect our Catholic faith. I mean, there are things that are happening even today in this country. What is a 77-year-old woman who was just recently sentenced to 2 years in prison for her participation in prayers outside of an abortion clinic. I mean, it's not that far-fetched. It's not like we've seen those headlines that I just showed you for the last time. And it's not like those headlines can't someday appear here in the United States. Yeah, and I remember a few years ago, there was a lady. I showed you. Hitler came to power in January of 33, and by June of 33, they're putting Catholics in prison. Yeah, I remember a few years ago that might have been just last year, but there was a lady in the UK who was standing by herself silently on the sidewalk in London, maybe 500 yards away from an abortion clinic, and she's just standing there. She's not protesting. She doesn't have anyone with her. She doesn't have a sign, but she's standing there, and she's holding her rosary in her hand. And one of the police officers there, one of the I don't know if it was like Metro PD or whatever, came up to her and asked her. They said, "Are you praying?" And she said, "Yes." And they arrested her for it.
Yep.
They arrested her on the spot because she was praying to end abortion.
Silent.
Not any silent prayer, not anywhere near the entrance to the clinic, not interfering with any person whatsoever. But she was standing there silently by herself praying, and she was arrested for it. And tell you what, it made me really glad that I live here in the US. But then we see people getting arrested like we just talked about, like you just mentioned, with the 77-year-old woman who was just sentenced to 2 years in prison because she was present during a protest at a abortion clinic, and so she was charged there. It doesn't take a huge stretch of imagination to think that it's not going to be easy going forward.
No.
But I mean, how many months ago was vocal, open Catholic? But that also is not an excuse to turn into a hyper militant jerk.
No.
And start causing issues. Speak up. Yes. Stand your ground. Yes. But speaking up and standing your ground is not the same as, well, you know what I'm going to do because they arrested this and they convicted this 77-year-old woman of whatever and sent her to prison for 2 years. I'm going to now up her game and I'm going to walk into the abortion clinic and I'm going to cause problems. Don't do that. At least just do the very same thing she did. Okay? Stand there in protest in the protection of life and be willing to face whatever consequences comes for upholding the dignity of human life. But that it doesn't mean you escalate to something that would start to violate the actual teachings of the Catholic Church. It's not an excuse to be a jerk just because you're angry now. The anger is justifiable, but don't step it up to the point where you're actually causing problems and you are the cause of the problem rather than being someone trying to resist something or finally stop the murder of innocent children in the womb. It doesn't mean like, well, you know what? Let me go Timothy McVeigh. Do not do that. That's horrible. And we definitely don't need to lower ourselves to match the very already low opinions that these people have of us. We are to rise above, remembering that God wins in the end, and it is our duty to endure this earth while doing what we can to make it better. Right?
Absolutely.
It's not going to be easy. It's going to require us to have, and you know what? It may require violence at some point. But the violence is only going to have to will only ever be justified if it's in response to actual violence, right? It can't be something that we start because that is morally and inherently wrong.
Yeah.
And I know some people are going to go, well, that's just a weakness talking. Yeah, sure, because Christ was definitely weak for enduring and letting the thing happen to him, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And look, you can disagree all you want, but fortunately, I've only got about 18 seconds left in this, so I'm not going to be able to hear your rebuttals. So, me and Ed, they're going to get out of here. Y'all have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody. God bless.